I'm here inside the Treasury Department in the diplomatic room with none other than the Treasury Secretary of the United States, Steven Mnuchin. Mr. Mnuchin, Mr. Secretary, thanks for joining us.
Thank you very much. It's great to be here with you.
The President made a very impassioned plea yesterday, support for the tax package, but many on Wall Street are a little bit confused because there is no package. Could you explain to us why there's no package or details about rates and things like that coming from the White House?
Well, first of all, there absolutely is a package. So I think, as you know, I've had the opportunity to work with the President on tax reform for over the last year. We started on the campaign looking at these issues. He did two major speeches during the campaign, both in New York and Detroit. And since January, I've been working with Gary Cohn and the leadership on this plan. So we have a very detailed plan. What yesterday was about, and we couldn't be more excited that the President kicked off the campaign for tax reform, is taking it to the people. And what the President is focused on is explaining to the American public why tax reform is important. And it's about creating American jobs. It's about creating competitive business so that we can bring back trillions of dollars and have it invested here. And it's about a middle income tax cut and tax simplification. And those are the issues that the President wanted to explain to the people in Missouri.
I get that, and I do want to talk more about that. But when you say there's a package, are there numbers and rates and growth estimates and things like that in that package that we can talk about?
Well, first of all, as I said, we've been working on the details.
Sure.
We came out with a statement on the Group of Six when we started this process. We wanted to bring the three of us together, make sure that there was one plan with the administration, the House, and the Senate. We've done that. The House and the Senate are now socializing the plan with their members. We're going to release a blueprint, and it's going to go to committee, and we're going to turn this into a bill which the President will sign.
So you've spent some time on Wall Street, and you understand the imperative that's out there right now to discount when this thing is going to happen and when we'll see it. Can you walk us through and I know you love doing this because I know how complicated it's been in the past. What's your best timeline? When can we see the numbers, and when do you think it might work its way through committee to the President's desk?
Well, Steve, first of all, I've been in the trading markets for the last 30 years.
I know.
And markets move. So I think, as you know, we talked about originally our goal had been August. Unfortunately, things got delayed a bit. But we're on a track to get this done by the end of the year. So you're going to see the details come out later this month. It's going to go through a committee process. And we expect the House and the Senate will get this to the President to sign this year. And we couldn't be more excited about the progress we've made.
If you could help me out with one number that I think is of critical importance on Wall Street, which is the corporate tax number that you're going for. The President yesterday said ideally 15%, which suggested to me some sense of the reality that 15% is a very hard number. We've seen in press reports a number more like 20 to 25%. Is that a realistic number you think investors should think about for a new corporate tax rate?
Well, let me just comment on, in the campaign, the President came out and said we wanted to have a 15% corporate rate. And let me just say, this is not just corporate rate. We want to make sure there's business rates so that small businesses can take advantage of this as well. This is not just about big business. But the President made very clear that that was our goal during the campaign. When we came out with a plan earlier in the administration, we said that. And our objective is to get down to 15%. Now, having said that, I think, as you know, there's a bunch of different levers that we can move. And we've gone through the different scenarios and the different levers, and these are the things that are being socialized with members, and we'll go through with the committees, and we'll see where we end up. But as the President said yesterday, that would be the ideal rate. But wherever we end up, the objective is to get a competitive business rate. We have one of the highest rates in the world. We have this concept of worldwide, but with deferral. So it encourages companies to move their business offshore and keep their profits onshore. And what's most important is that we end up with a competitive rate and that we ended up with a territorial system. And that's what we've heard from literally hundreds and hundreds of business people.
Is it also important that you end up being revenue neutral either on the corporate tax side or in terms of the whole package, putting together corporate and individual taxes?
Well, this is one of the things that's under discussions. And obviously, the administration believes we can get growth. The difference between 2% and 3% is trillions of dollars. We have to deal with the congressional models. So one of the discussions we're having with Congress is how we score it. I think there was an excellent editorial in the Wall Street Journal today that talks about the difference between policy and baseline. So these are technical issues that we're working with Congress on. But let me be very clear. The president is concerned that the debt has gone from 10 trillion to 20 trillion, and whatever we do, we're going to be comfortable can be paid for with growth.
Does that mean the president is committed to revenue neutrality in the tax reform package?
Well, again, when you talk about revenue neutrality, it depends on how you score it. So under our models, we are absolutely committed to revenue neutrality. That doesn't mean that it has to be revenue neutral when we look at if we don't get the incorporated growth. But these are the discussions that, as it passes through the congressional process, are going to be debated and decided. Let
me turn to another issue that's a technicality until it isn't. Is September 29th still the date when we'll reach the debt ceiling?
It is.
So the tax receipts haven't changed from your earlier estimates, and the spending is on track to September 29th is still that day?
I mean, that's correct. I mean, what I would say is the next big cash day for us is obviously September 15th. That's when we get corporate taxes. So the projections could move around a little bit. We obviously have now the hurricane spending, which is an issue. So that's going to have some impact to our September spending. But more importantly, we're going to have to go to Congress and get authorization to spend more, because it's absolutely critical that we spend money to help the state.
So you have to go to Congress earlier than you otherwise to get that money for Harvey, for aid for the hurricane. And is that going to change the day to bring it forward in terms of when we might hit the debt ceiling?
Again, I think there are two different issues. I think in terms of when it's going to hit the debt ceiling, again, I think there could be some impact of a couple of days, but that would be most. But on top of that, we do need more money for Harvey, and we'll be working with Congress on that.
Do you expect the debt ceiling to be raised by Congress?
Absolutely. I think there's no question that both Democrats and Republicans intend to raise the debt ceiling. Nobody is going to let the U.S. government default on its debt.
As a clean bill?
Again, I've said before, my preference is to pass it clean, but at the end of the day, it's all about raising it. And if they want to raise it and attach it to something, that's fine with me as well.
I hate this process stuff, but is it possible they would attach Harvey aid to the debt ceiling bill?
Again, I'm not going to comment on any of the specifics. I will tell you, we are having discussions with the leadership. We're having discussions with the Republicans and the Democrats, and I'm very confident we'll get this raised.
What kind of economic impact are you expecting from the hurricane?
I think it's a little too early to tell, but I think there definitely is going to be some economic impact. Obviously, we're looking at what has been, a devastating storm, and it's not finished.
A recent development, well, it's not that recent, the dollar has been weakening for quite some time. Do you look at that as a positive development for the U.S. economy, a negative development? What's your view on the level of the dollar and its relative strength?
Well, obviously, the short-term issues of the dollar have both positive and negative impacts for different parts of the economy. Obviously, as it relates to trade, having a weaker dollar is somewhat better for us. What I've said consistently is where the dollar is in the short term is less of a concern for me. I do think over long periods of time, the dollar strength is an indication of the reserve currency and the confidence that people have in the U.S. economy.
So in general, you think a stronger dollar is better for the country than a weaker dollar over time?
Again, I would say it's not a question of whether it's better or not. It's somewhat inevitable given the strength of the U.S. economy and the confidence that people have.
Fed Chair Janet Yellen recently in Jackson Hole praised the Dodd-Frank bill and recent regulatory reform. In fact, sort of contradicted the president, saying that she had seen little decline in lending and said it actually helped the economy. Is the administration and the Federal Reserve, are they at odds over regulatory reform, and is that a problem right now?
Well, let me just comment on, I had breakfast with Fed Chair Yellen this morning. We meet on a weekly basis, as have previous Treasury Secretaries in the Fed. And we have a very constructive dialogue on a lot of issues, including regulation. And one of the areas we are focused on working on with the Fed is fixing the Volcker rule. But I think, as you've seen, the Treasury put out a report on what we believe are regulatory changes. I would describe about 70 or 80% of them we can work with the regulators, which we have a working group on, and the balance we're going to need congressional support for. But we believe in proper regulation, but we also believe we need to make sure that banks can lend, particularly community banks and regional banks.
So there aren't differences now between the Federal Reserve leadership as it is now and either the Treasury or the administration on regulatory reform?
Again, I would say that we are working on a lot of things together with the Fed and see many aspects of this the same way.
I assume you're involved in this process of the decision over a new Fed chair. Can you tell us where the process is?
Again, I think it would be inappropriate for me to make any comments on that at this time. I will say I am involved in the process, and ultimately the president will make a decision later in the year.
Is later in the year, December, November, an idea when we can perhaps get ready for and be prepared for an appointment or
That's for the president to decide, and it would be inappropriate for me to comment on that.
We've talked about this as a two-horse race between Gary Cohn and Chair Yellen. Is that the way to think about it?
Again, I watch your show.
I'm 0 for 3.
And I see what you're saying, and it would be inappropriate for me to make any comments on that.
I'm done with that question. I will move on.
Thank you.
The president yesterday threatened to pull out of NAFTA again. Would that have negative implications for the United States?
So, this is an issue, and again, I've had the benefit to work with the president since the campaign. The president's been very consistent, starting in the campaign and now in his presidency, that he thinks NAFTA is a bad deal, that's an old deal, and he wants to renegotiate it. And I speak to Ambassador Lighthizer on a regular basis. There are discussions underway. I'm hopeful there is a win-win solution, but the president has been very clear he intends to renegotiate this deal, and if not, he wants to get out of it.
And what would be the implications of that for the economy?
Again,
especially if we unilaterally withdrew.
Again, I'm not going to make any comments yet because I think the expectation is that we will renegotiate this deal in a way that's good for us and good for them.
The president has supported the Cotton-Purdue immigration bill, which would reduce legal immigration over a fairly short period of time by 50%. Most economic analyses that I've read say this would be negative for GDP and for economic growth. Do you think it's a good idea to support this bill and reduce immigration in the United States?
I think the president is very focused on making sure that Americans have good-paying jobs and have proper jobs. And I think that's his priority. And I think that you've seen the president has also been very focused on stopping illegal immigration.
But what about the economic implications of since immigration is a big part of population growth, and population growth is a big part of economic growth?
I think that's right, but I think there's a lot of issues that are going to focus the economy in the short term that are much more important than this one.
So you don't think it'll have a negative impact on?
No, I do not in the short term.
Last question, Mr. Secretary, and thank you for abiding the other ones. Secretary Lew, before you, your predecessor, supported the idea of removing Andrew Jackson from the $20 bill and putting Harriet Tubman on. Do you support that idea?
Well, let me just comment on, ultimately we will be looking at this issue. It's not something that I'm focused on at the moment. But the number one issue, why we changed the currency, is to stop counterfeiting. So the issues of why we change it will be primarily related to what we need to do for security purposes. And I've received classified briefings on that, and that's what I'm focused on for the moment.
But certainly there are cultural aspects as to decisions we make as to who's on what bills, right?
Again, people have been on the bills for a long period of time. This is something we'll consider. Right now, we've got a lot more important issues to focus on.
Mr. Secretary, thank you for joining us on CNBC.
Thank you.
Hey there, thanks for checking out CNBC on YouTube. Be sure to subscribe to stay up to date on all of the day's biggest stories. You can also click on any of the videos around me to watch the latest from CNBC. Thanks for watching.